Hello, everyone. Welcome to Nightly Scroll. I am Hayley Caronia. Thank you for joining me tonight. I have already seen people in the chat. We've got people from Maryland. We've got people from Indiana. Welcome. If you want to join everyone in the chat, you have to do it on Rumble. Rumble.com/Hayley is the only place you can watch Nightly Scroll live. So join us at 6 p.m. Eastern Time, Monday to Friday. If not, you can watch later or on your favorite podcast platform, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your shows. Just make sure that you are subscribed so that you never miss a show. So let's get into tonight. President Trump's team is trolling Gavin Newsom in the funniest way possible. We'll get into it. Plus, an unsuspecting gay icon, she's not gay, but an icon among the gays, has donated thousands of dollars to Republican candidates. President Trump is honoring her, and the LGBTQ community is not happy. BuzzFeed is complaining about the Oval Office decor. Is it cheap or is it just cost effective? Plus, is Alligator Alcatraz closing? Uncovered emails suggest that the number of migrants being detained has dropped significantly, and it may be down to 0 soon. Plus, I have former Secret Service agent Scott Bryson on deck to break down more details from yesterday's horrific school shooting in Minnesota. Without further ado, Nightly Scroll starts now. Governor Gavin Newsom, he is speaking earlier today at Politico's The California Agenda Sacramento Summit. That was not earlier today. That was earlier yesterday. And he was talking to the audience about the need to wake up to all of the dangers that President Trump is posing to this country. Watch this.
You're not saying you think Republicans are going to stop?
I don't think Donald Trump wants another election. You think for a second I have 24 Trump 2028 hats. His folks keep sending me.
And you think he's going to run again?
No, don't give me. Who spends $200 million on a ballroom at their home and then leaves the house?
I just want to say,
and we're still trying to get
hold on. What's happening here? Everyone, hold your horses. We've got all the banners, all the videos. Okay, so let's talk about the Trump one. So Gavin Newsom, totally triggered by President Trump. President Trump is, of course, selling the 2028 hats, right? Trump 2028, as if he is running for president again. But we all know that he is not actually doing that. He has said time and time again that he is not running in 2028. He is more than happy to pass the torch to someone else in the Republican Party to kind of carry on the America First MAGA movement. He has already said that Vice President J.D. Vance would be an awesome pick, also threw out the name of Secretary Marco Rubio. So President Trump has been on the record. It was even on NBC. It was on a leftist mainstream media news platform. So you would think that Governor Gavin Newsom would have seen that clip, but of course, they just like to fearmonger instead. But this has been a long-standing joke. President Trump has debunked it. And also, not to be annoyingly technical, but if President Trump really didn't want another election, he could just keep selling Trump 2024 hats because that would have been the last election. Am I right? I mean, he wouldn't have to sell Trump 2028 hats if he wasn't going to run again. Just saying. So by him even joking about another election means that Trump is a pretty bad dictator, right? They like to call him Hitler. He's a dictator. He's this horrible monster, but he's really not so good at it. But, President Trump and his team obviously taunting Gavin Newsom because he's the likely nominee for the Democrats in 2028. Gavin Newsom argues that President Trump adding on to the White House with this ballroom is a signal that he's going to stay forever. That's insane. All of these additions that President Trump is making to the White House, that is just part of his legacy, right? He's spending millions of dollars of his own money and from donors, not relying on the taxpayers to add on to this banquet room, this ballroom for the people, right? This is the people's house. This is about President Trump's legacy. He's a real estate mogul. He's going to build this and he's going to leave it for the people so that the White House can host more events and things like that. But BuzzFeed is complaining about President Trump's Oval Office decor. A lot of people, a lot of leftists online have been saying that President Trump and all of the gold updates to the Oval Office are gaudy. But this is Trump we're talking about, right? So if you've ever been to Mar-a-Lago, you walk in, everything's gold. This is the golden age. It makes total sense, right? This is very, very Trump. Not to mention every president who comes in can make changes to the White House. They're there for 4 years. They change out the carpets. They change out the drapes. This is what happens, right? But of course, BuzzFeed, they posted this earlier today. It looks like some of the gold that they put in quotes in Trump's Oval Office is $60 plastic from Home Depot. So they go through, are you able to scroll through there on those pictures so we can see? They have this photo from the Home Depot website that has these little fixtures and what they claim is maybe proof that potentially they are budget items. They are not actually gold. They are just painted over. To which I say, yeah. Are you pissed that they're not like whatever 24 karat gold? You're upset that President Trump is saving money? I mean, they're mad at him when he's cost effective. They're mad at him when he uses his own money. They're mad when he's, on a budget. The left is just mad at him. But President Trump has teased a new way to invigorate the party ahead of the next election, the midterm election. And this is very interesting. No one's done this before. So leave it to President Trump to be the first, right? I think he loves doing this. But we could pull up President Trump's Truth Social post from earlier today, teasing this RNC-like event before the midterms. The Republican Party is doing really well, he says. Millions of people have joined us in our quest to make America great again. And he goes on to say that I am thinking of recommending a national convention to the Republican Party just prior to the midterms. It has never been done before. Stay tuned. Signed, Donald J. Trump, President of the United States of America. This is a different sign-off. Normally, it's the DJT or the thank you for your attention to this matter, but he signed off President of the United States of America, and I think this is a great idea. It is a great way to feature these heartwarming stories. You remember, like President Trump's joint session of Congress earlier this year, he honored DJ Daniel, the 13-year-old brain cancer survivor who loves law enforcement. He honored the lives of Laken Riley, hosted her family, and gave them, a moment to be honored and to remember Laken Riley. It is an opportunity to showcase what the party stands for. And instead of a State of the Union address like that, which is kind of stuffy and there are Democrats there to ruin the vibe, this would be more like a Trump campaign rally that he throws for the entirety of the Republican Party. Because President Trump is not on the ballot, technically. He's already president. But his agenda is on the ballot. And candidates who need to win to push that agenda forward are on the ballot. And nobody campaigns harder than President Trump. And, he's putting this new addition onto the White House. I would argue nobody parties like President Trump. Nobody reaches the voters better, in my opinion.
In the history of the presidents of the United States, there's been wives that have notoriously served the presidency by throwing social gatherings. What is controversial about having an awesome ballroom?
No, there's not. And this is not to say that this RNC type event would be thrown there, because I'm sure it's going to take a long time to build it. But, to your point about the previous story, it is not controversial. He's using his own money. It's not taxpayer funded. What's the big deal?
Kid Rock concert in the White House, in the ballroom?
Hey.
You got anybody that can get tickets?
That'd be pretty cool. And if you've ever been to a Trump rally, you know that the energy is unmatched. Have you ever been to one, Andy?
I have not.
Guy, have you ever been to one? No, they're shaking their heads. Listen, you're missing out. Anyone in the chat? Are you, has anyone been to a Trump rally? Because it is unlike any event I have ever been to. The energy is unmatched. You can feel the energy. It's loud in there. The one that I went to was indoors. It was in Vegas. I know some of them are outdoors, but I think you could probably still feel that energy. It's like palpable, feeling the energy through the room or the space that you were in.
I heard somebody describe it as, imagine the 4th of July being at your favorite football stadium. Like that kind of energy. It
really is. I feel like everyone is in a good mood. Everyone's nice. You meet so many people obviously like-minded people. It is so much fun. And I've been to a Joe Biden rally, actually, for work. And it's very low energy, lackluster, boring, yawn. So in comparison, whatever this RNC type event would be very, very cool. And that's the kind of energy we need ahead of the midterms so that Congress can deliver more of what we voted for. And the Democrats are totally cooked, by the way, based on the fundraising numbers that President Trump announced yesterday. The Democrats had about $65 million on hand at the end of July. President Trump says he's raised $1.5 billion in just 6 months. And the Democrats are still paying back the Harris campaign debt. But the Republicans have an unsuspecting donor contributing $22,000 to Republican races in the last few years. Gloria Gaynor, according to FEC records, has donated $22,000 to right-wing politicians like Mike Johnson, Josh Hawley, Ted Cruz, and Marsha Blackburn since 2023. And all the donations were recorded under her birth name, Gloria Fowles. So someone did some digging and found out that it was actually Gloria Gaynor. And President Trump wants to honor her, among others, like Sylvester Stallone and George Strait and others, at the Kennedy Center Honors, an event that he is hosting in December. The president appointed himself to the Kennedy Center, the head of the Kennedy Center. You know how you asked me yesterday? Someone had asked me, I was answering questions on the show. Someone asked me what cabinet position I would want to be, I would want to have. And Andy said, you should be the head of the, not that this is a cabinet position, but what about being the head of the arts and, head of the Kennedy Center? And I was saying, who is that? I don't know who it is. And apparently it's President Trump. I learned from reading this article today. So who else, right? And because he is the head of the Kennedy Center, he told the board that he wants to host the event. So he is back. He is commanding the room. He wants the television, the lights, the camera, the action, all of that. So anyway, back to Gloria Gaynor. Apparently her song, I Will Survive, is very popular among the gay community. They are upset with her. And even Ana Navarro, who's from CNN, The View, she spoke out saying Gloria Gaynor shouldn't even accept the award. She shouldn't even go. And Gloria hasn't come out and responded yet, but something tells me that if she's willing to donate thousands of dollars to Republican candidates and causes, she's not going to be too offended to accept an award from President Trump. So I think we can look forward to that in December. But another kind of unsuspecting Republican is Mark Teixeira. He played for the Yankees, and he is running for Congress. He announced this earlier today. We can put this post on X up. Not Bryson yet. Hold on. I've got a post from Mark Teixeira. He was announcing his congressional run. Chip Roy was not going to run anymore, Congressman Chip Roy. He is now launching a run for Attorney General to replace Ken Paxton in Texas. So Chip Roy's seat is open, and Mark Teixeira is ready to fill in for Chip Roy. So hopefully he wins. But he posted earlier today, big news, I'm ready to go. As lifelong conservative who loves this country, I am running for Congress to fight for the principles that make Texas and America great. It takes teamwork to win. I'm ready to help defend President Trump's America First agenda, Texas families, and individual liberty. I think this is very cool. He is not the only former athlete or athlete adjacent to run for Congress. We have a lot of these now. We have, in the past, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Herschel Walker, Burgess Owens, who else? Tommy Tuberville in the Senate. Who else is? Jake Beckett from Arkansas. He played football. There's a lot of athletes in Congress now. So I think he will make a wonderful addition should he win. And I saw Senator Eric Schmidt responded to that post saying, if he gets in, we are going to win the congressional baseball game by 50. And as you know, if you keep up with the scorecard, if you will, for the congressional baseball game, Republicans kill the Democrats almost every year. They are they've been undefeated for I don't know how many years, but the past few years. So I think if they have Mark Teixeira, they will be in business. But I want to quickly talk to you about the sponsors for tonight's show. First up is Boll & Branch. You know the common myths we hear, like cold weather causes colds, or we only use 10% of our brains? Here's another one. Thread count. Many people think a higher thread count means better sheets, but it is really just a measure of fabric density. And when it comes to sheets, what actually matters is the quality of the thread itself. That is where Boll & Branch comes in. Their sheets have changed the game for my sleep. They are crafted with premium organic cotton, making them feel so soft and luxurious. Plus, they are built to last. And the best part is they only get softer with every wash. I can attest to this. I have slept on Boll & Branch for years. They only get softer. They just sent me a new pair. I've only washed them a few times, and I can already feel them getting softer. So it's not about how many threads there are. It is about how they make you feel, and they make me feel really good. So if you're after sheets that offer both luxury and durability, Boll & Branch is the only way to go. Trust me, you will never look at your bed the same way again. Feel the difference an extraordinary night's sleep can make with Boll & Branch. Get 15% off plus free shipping on your first set of sheets at bollandbranch.com/scroll. That is Boll & Branch, BOLLAND branch.com/scroll to save 15% and unlock free shipping. Exclusions apply. Visit bollandbranch.com for details. Also want to tell you tonight about Genucel. You've heard me tell you about the transformative results that people see after using Genucel. Here's another one from Sandra in Arlington, Virginia. This is a true story. This is what she says. After just 5 days of using Genucel products, her husband told her, "You look young. Whatever you're doing is working," which sounds like a fake commercial, but that is actually what happened. Her husband didn't know that she had bought Genucel products. She's loving the texture. The products are easy to use. They were working on her very sensitive skin, fine lines, wrinkles. And she has tried many expensive products and says that this one works. So now it is your turn to see results like Sandra and myself during Genucel's summer sale. Get Genucel's complete skincare package, which now includes the dark spot corrector, plus the classic Genucel bags and puffiness treatment, immediate effects for results in just minutes, and even their breakthrough jawline treatment to help tone and contour the jawline area. All of this for 70% off. Try the best skincare in the world for yourself, completely risk-free. Go to Genucel.com/scroll today and start looking years, if not decades, younger tomorrow. All orders are upgraded to free shipping. See results on day one. You'll get compliments everywhere you go, guaranteed, or your money back. That's Genucel.com/scroll, Genucel.com/scroll. All right. We all love Alligator Alcatraz down in the Everglades in Florida. This is the detention center put up by Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, DHS. This is where they're housing a bunch of migrants, right? These were the beds. It was supposed to fit, I think, 1,000 migrants, if not more than that. So I think at first they said it was going to fit 1,000 migrants, but they could maybe expand it to maybe 3,000. So it has a lot of capacity, right? But according to new uncovered emails, apparently Alligator Alcatraz is looking a little bare these days. So what's happening? A South Florida rabbi reached out to Alligator Alcatraz saying that he wanted to service the inmates there, the detainees, and they basically wrote back, members of DHS, Alligator Alcatraz wrote back to this rabbi saying, Alligator Alcatraz is going to be empty soon. It's going to be empty likely within a few days. That's what the email said. This is emails that were obtained by the Associated Press first and also obtained by CBS and other news outlets. So this rabbi asking if he could come to Alligator Alcatraz, they say, no one here, right? Or in the next few days, no one's going to be there. So we went from 1,000 beds to like 300 detainees, and then apparently soon there's going to be 0. So the Department of Homeland Security has begun moving detainees out of Alligator Alcatraz after a federal judge ruled that parts of the facility must be dismantled. So DHS said in a statement that they are still efforting deportations and getting criminals off of the streets. They're still committed to the mission, but they are being transferred to other immigration centers and detention centers across the state. So it's not that there isn't a need for alligator Alcatraz, but again, we all know that whatever President Trump does, whatever Republicans do, these judges, activist judges, they are going to fight it at every turn. So this is one of those reasons, or one of those examples, I should say. And it's not that there's a lack of need for alligator Alcatraz, because as we know, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis has already announced that alligator Alcatraz wasn't enough. They were repurposing another jail west of Jacksonville that they were going to call Deportation Depot. So maybe they're moving some of the alligator Alcatraz detainees up there, but as DHS said, they are still working on it. Another very controversial and really concerning story about leftist violence being a global issue. So Argentinian President Javier Milei had a campaign rally, and leftist protesters tried to stone him. Wild. This is the headline. Leftists tried to stone Argentina's Javier Milei at a campaign rally. When I saw this, I thought, well, of course, because this is the tolerant left, right? So Javier Milei is under fire recently because, according to recordings, this is all alleged, but the head of National Disability Agency there in Argentina claims that basically there's a 10 for the big guy kind of situation happening in the Milei family. So according to this National Disability Agency head, President Milei and his sister are getting kind of this 3% kickback from Big Pharma. So that's what's happening in Argentina. So at this rally, at this campaign rally, all of these protesters were coming because they were upset with him. He's been under fire for this. Again, this is just alleged. I don't know if this is confirmed or not, but this is what the sentiment is like going into this campaign rally. Lots of people upset with him, and Milei and his sister were riding in the back of a pickup truck. They were greeting some of the supporters at this rally outside of Buenos Aires, and protesters started throwing plants, rocks, and bottles at their vehicle. So thankfully, they were able to get to safety. But it just goes to show that leftist protesters, no matter where you go, you could just close your eyes and, drop a pin anywhere on the map. This is what they're all about. They are deeply disturbed and violent, which is very, very concerning. And speaking of violence, of course, we covered yesterday the horrific shooting, the school shooting by this trans, deeply disturbed individual at Annunciation Catholic Church in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And earlier this morning, HHS Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. was on Fox and Friends, and Brian Kilmeade asked Kennedy, what are we going to do about the mental health crisis in this country? And not only that, what are we going to do to investigate the drugs that this person was on? So here was his response to that. Watch.
Prevent it, and we're still trying to get a lot of answers to a ton of questions. But the one thing is clear: you are dealing with a person who's trans, that was transitioning. Are you going to be examining at all some of the drugs that are used in order to make that transition happening, to see if it plays a role? Because we also know there was a trans shooter in the Tennessee situation.
Yeah, we are doing those kind of studies now at NIH. We're launching studies on the potential contribution of some of the SSRI drugs and some of the other psychiatric drugs that might be contributing to violence. Many of them on there had black box warnings that warn of suicidal ideation and homicidal ideation. So we can't exclude those as a culprit, and those are the kind of studies that we're doing.
So I've never seen that medicine, but you're saying that if you get it, some of the side effects could be homicide, suicide?
Well, there are black box warnings on some of these psychiatric drugs that warn about, in their clinical trials, that they saw suicidal and homicidal ideation. So, we are going into that with an open mind.
Which is very interesting. I'm hopeful that Secretary Kennedy does launch these investigations and get some answers, because this is a very concerning trend. It is not just one or two. It is now a trend of transgender individuals. And now I want to say, I don't know exactly what drugs this killer was on. I don't know if he was on SSRIs, but certainly he was in the middle of a transition from male to female, so he was on some kind of drug. A lot of these people are mentally ill. They are depressed. They have anxiety. So whether or not he was on SSRIs, I don't know. But I think an investigation into this is important. But I would also argue that an investigation into the gender-affirming drugs as well is needed. So here with me to break down all of the latest details is Scott Bryson, former Secret Service agent. He is also host of the Beyond the Service podcast and a Silverlock contributor. Scott, thank you so much for being here.
Hey, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure, as always.
Yeah, and unfortunately, it's not on better circumstances. This is horrific news out of Minneapolis yesterday. And it's not just trans people who are on SSRIs, right? A lot of people take these drugs for anxiety, depression. What do you think needs to be done on this front? If you are taking a drug that has this kind of black box warning, should there be an extra step of some sort to obtain a firearm, in your opinion? Or is any kind of gun control an infringement on the Second Amendment?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think the Second Amendment is obviously very important. Without the Second Amendment, you don't have the First or any of the other ones, right? So we have to be very careful with that. And I'm not a medical professional. However, I do have common sense. And what I would like to say about that is, if you sit around and watch the mainstream news, whether it's CNN or Fox or whatever's on, whatever cable network's on, you can't hardly watch a news broadcast without 16 commercials, and 14 of them are big pharma. And it's funny because like all of the side effects seem to be worse than what it's trying to help you cope with.
Yeah.
So my thing is, and again, I'm not a doctor. I'm not here to give medical advice, but I believe that proper diet, sunlight, sleep, and exercise cures a lot of these problems. And in fact, in the last year, I've done some fasting, and that's helped me some too. So I just think you have to do your due diligence. And if you want to take medicine, by all means, consult with a physician, not a security expert. But I just think doing your due diligence and your own research and being a free thinker is the way forward, not just be gullible and take it hook, line, and sinker.
Yeah. Do you think that there needs to be maybe an extra step to figure out and investigate whether or not someone with a mental illness is able to have a firearm? Or it's a slippery slope, because I believe in the Second Amendment. I am an absolutist, and I truly do believe like anything like a red flag law that goes against someone's constitutional right to own a firearm. I don't believe in anything like that. But at the same time, we're seeing these mentally ill individuals carry out these mass shootings. And that's really the common denominator between all of these shooters, is that they're mentally ill. It's a pattern now. And people, I feel like on the left, Democrat politicians, they've been very quick to defend the trans community. They're kind of giving their blind support and their blind defense of this community, when we're really asking them, just, can you please look into this?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think all of that's right. I watched Vince's show this morning, and man, he was saying everything I was thinking. It's really common sense type stuff. And that's what I love about this platform and your audience. I finally have found my people. I know I can get on here and I can say things. Like I say on my podcast, I like to speak truth to power, and I don't have to be worried about being censored or pulled down or some of these other things like some of these other platforms do. But it basically gets down to, it's very easy, I think, to blame the gun business owner or the gun show people or whatever, because we see the end product. but we don't reverse engineer it. We don't go back and see what the actual underlying. It's easy to see the end product and then blame. We want to put the blame on everybody but the bad guy, it seems like. And here's what I want to say to your question. The information in those data bank, the guy selling the gun is only as good as what he only knows what's in the data bank.
Right.
And I think personally, and this is a hot button topic, but I think a lot of times clinicians don't necessarily tell the truth, and I'm not going to say they lie, but maybe they omit things or whatever because they're afraid of infringing on someone's rights because of HIPAA and all the things. And so, like if I own a gun shop and you come in and want to buy a gun and I run you to the database, well, guess what? The ATF only knows what the ATF knows, and if some doctor somewhere doesn't put that information in there, the poor guy selling the gun doesn't know, but he's the bad guy.
Yeah, and I mean, how can you trust the therapists nowadays anyway? I mean, some of them are professional and some of them are probably woke and not trustworthy, right? But a lot of these trans people, they are seeking some kind of therapy in order to obtain these gender affirming drugs. So I want to talk now about motive because it's very interesting to see how the media reacts and how the Democrats react and everyone else reacts to when a shooting like this takes place. It seems like depending on who the shooter is, we either get a motive or we don't. Or people are quick to maybe come up with a motive or bury it. And in this case, it seems like because the shooter is trans, the mainstream media, Democrats, they are trying to quickly defend and bury a motive. But I want to ask you, I can understand from a media perspective, you don't want to speculate, right? You don't want to report speculation as fact. That is dangerous. Now, we can put two and two together about the person being trans. Of course, they have these writings in the manifesto that depict the devil and some other kind of. So, and again, he shot up a Catholic school, so maybe there's a motive there. But in terms of a law enforcement investigation, what goes into determining a motive and how long does that investigation usually take?
Yeah, that's very dependent upon the situation and the circumstances. And obviously, I think we as the general public, we want to know more. Unfortunately, it's a need to know. And so whether it's the local police detectives doing their thing or the FBI is involved, I do believe that these types of cases get very thoroughly investigated and they get scrubbed. Basically, what they do is they go back and they look at all the social media platforms that might be there. They'll go through the house and in this case, find a manifesto or notebooks, plural. And it will take some time. I think the general public, especially in this day and age with information technology at our fingertips, we want an answer yesterday, but this takes time. You can be good or you can be fast. And sometimes you can be both, but not always, right? So it's like, I think being thorough is more important.
Yeah.
And I think that's what these guys are going to have to do. And I think basically, interviewing people, loved ones, unfortunately, I know that, when these things happen, the parents are probably distraught or siblings or loved ones, grandparents, whomever, neighbors. I think they're just going to have to canvass the whole area and they're going to start kind of in the nucleus of the home and work their way out. And it will take some time for sure.
Well, speaking of the nucleus of the home, the last I checked, and maybe you guys can tell me if it's changed since the show has started, but the FBI and local law enforcement have not yet spoken to the shooter's mother. And in this kind of a situation, is this like, how does that work? How do you find this woman and get her to talk? Is there a way to do that? And is there a way to do that fast? What does that look like?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what her exact circumstances are, but I mean, the mother should be easy to find. Like, for example, and this, I don't know if this is a great analogy, but it comes to mind. So a lot of times in homicides, not mass shootings, the number one suspect is usually the estranged husband or the husband or the boy, right? It's just what it is. Like, these crimes aren't like, there are serial killers out there that take years to figure out, but a lot of crime is very basic and it's very similar and it's based off of rage or hurt or sadness or past trauma. But yeah, you generally start right at home in the case of a spouse with a spouse. or the parents. I don't know why she's not readily available, but I would think they would find her very quickly.
Yeah, well, I want to talk to you about the mom and her proximity to the school. So apparently she worked there. So there is a chance that the shooter was familiar with the school. Maybe he had been there before, especially in the case of the Covenant shooting in Nashville. The shooter went to that school, right? So in that kind of a situation, when the killer maybe has a scary familiarity with the school, how do schools need to prepare themselves better for an attack like this? Because maybe the killer is someone in the community, knows teachers, knows people well, knows where kids are going to be congregating at certain times. How do you prepare for something like that?
Yeah, that's a good question. Obviously, like as sad as this was yesterday, he knew the schedule. You know, these guys are, first of all, they're cowards, and they're looking for targets of soft targets and convenience. And so he knew that they were going to be gathered up for the early mass or worship service, whatever it was. You know, they did the same thing at public schools. They know that the cafeteria is a place where kids are going to have to eat. There's going to be a bunch of kids in the cafeteria or the gymnasium or wherever, right? So it's a crime of convenience a lot of times, and it's soft targets. And unfortunately, like the case in Tennessee, the shooter had 2 schools narrowed down, and I think they went to the first school first, the one that was not victimized, and there was some type of armed security. I don't know if it was a police officer in a police car, but it was an armed security person, and that's what I call abort criteria. And so that makes it a little bit of a hard target. And then they went over to the other school, unfortunately, and that's why they were victimized, because it was a softer target. And I also understand and realize, because I've raised 3 children, and you don't want your kids to feel like they're, you know, at Fort Knox under lock and key, and not, you know, this isn't supposed to be a prison. It's supposed to be public or private school. It's supposed to be fun. You're supposed to learn and have friends and do all the things. But at some point, you know, we have to take security seriously. And in fact, a great example of that is when we lived overseas. I was very fortunate to live in London, England for 3.5 years. And our children went to the American school in London. And of course, England has got very strict gun laws, but they had former Israeli Shin Bet and soldiers that were dressed in very nice business attire, because the people going to school there were millionaires and billionaires, and then public servants like me. So we were kind of on the bottom of the totem pole, but they looked like they meant business. They were military age men. They were fit. They looked the part. You could just tell by looking at that guy, he meant business. So, you know, in a situation like that where you don't have access to a weapon, that's okay, because they have communication with each other. You have to have every ingress point covered. You know, having one guy isn't really enough. And I know here in the States, a lot of places have school resource officers, and that's amazing. And they do a great job. But Murphy's always chasing us. And if you're over in the cafeteria and something happens on the playground or vice versa, you can't be everywhere at one time. So we need to have more bodies at these schools, I think.
Absolutely. So what is your take on maybe arming teachers? Do teachers need to be armed just so that there are more people on the premises who can jump in a time of need? Like you said, you can't be everywhere at once. So in my opinion, I think the wrong way to go is to be a gun-free zone. The more good guys with guns to fight bad guys with guns, probably better outcome.
Yeah, no, it's a very touchy subject. I could see how this is a house divided for sure. The only way to stop a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun. That's not debatable. And all these things are happening in gun-free zones. We talked about this last time. Gun-free zones, that is an F- across the board. That is stupid. Teachers, I think if you're going to do that outside of the state of Texas, you might want to really vet the people, because not everybody's proficient with a gun. And like my wife's got her CCW, but I talk to her all the time. You don't pull it for a bluff. God forbid you need it. You have to pull it when you actually are in fear for your life. So I think it defaults to the level of the teacher. You could have a retired Secret Service agent that decided to teach school for a couple of years. That would be a different story. But your 26-year-old girl or man right out of college that's not really familiar with weapons, maybe not. So I think it's definitely case by case and not so cookie cutter.
Unfortunately, I think in blue states, they would fight this tooth and nail. I mean, they wouldn't even if there was like you said, a former Secret Service agent or former law enforcement who became a teacher, someone who is well-versed in this kind of thing. I think that in a blue state, Democrats would maybe not allow this at all, even if the person was very comfortable with a firearm and practiced with it. So unfortunately, I think maybe this might be a red state solution in the time being. But I wanted to kind of play out a hypothetical because I believe that there needs to be an armed security guard, more than one. I think if the school can afford it, I think they should find money in the budget for it. I think security is one of the most important things. And I know you mentioned earlier about kids not wanting to feel like they're in a prison. I think, unfortunately, we'd rather have all these kids alive than not. So I think if you asked any kid, they think that going to school is prison anyway, not to make light of a sad situation. But I think, unfortunately, I would rather have kids feel more comfortable seeing guns with good guys rather than being a target from a bad guy. But let's play out this hypothetical. If there is an armed security guard at every door of every school and someone walks up to the school with multiple firearms on them, at what point can the security guard or the armed teacher step in and open fire?
Yeah. So obviously, let me just preface it with saying this. You need to know what the general statute is for self-defense in your own state. Okay. Each state's got a little bit different, but it's all written very similar, but there are some differences. So you need to know the nuance. But the bottom line is, in layman's terms, is simply this. If you are in fear for your life or a third party, and a reasonable person, that's the key word, a reasonable person would feel the same way, that the threat is imminent, then you can act. You do not have to wait to be attacked or whatever. You know what I mean? And of course, that comes with more training and years of law enforcement. So I might react a little quicker than someone who has 2 years on the job, right? Or whatever. Right. So, I think knowing the law is key, but also, which gets back to going with your gut. You can't just go with your gut. You have to know the law, but common sense says if I see a person, and we sort of joke in law enforcement sometimes, and I know tonight's a serious segment, and I don't want to make light, but like, why would you bring a knife to a gunfight? If I see a man with a knife, I'm coming out of my holster right now, because a man with a knife can stab you within 21 feet, because it takes time to break leather and all the things. Right. So don't bring a knife to a gunfight. You know what I mean? And the same thing for schools. I have friends of mine that are SROs, school resource officers. I know firsthand how important that job is. And it's not necessarily, I want to make sure I'm very clear with what I said a minute ago, because I don't want there to be any misconception, because I'm as pro-police as it comes. It's not about feeling like the Gestapo, right? But it's like a lot of these law enforcement officers, they're very friendly, and they're there as a resource. It's not there just to protect, but it's there to foster relationships with the kids, and the kids love them. So the pushback is from the parents of the left. The kids love them. That's not the problem.
If you are in an active shooter type situation, and this just in general, maybe you're in a school, maybe you're in college, maybe you are, a lot of these shootings happen at workplaces, grocery stores, movie theaters, nightclubs, right? If you are in an active shooter situation, what are your top safety tips?
Yeah, there's a thing that law enforcement, it's a course called CRAZE. It stands for Civilian Response to Active Shooter Event. There's a company out of Texas that you can go online and Google it, CRASE, that's the acronym, and they put on training. And basically their model is to avoid, deny, and defend. So obviously, if you're at school and you're a teacher and you're trying to mind your own business and get your kids to the lunchroom and something bad's happening, you need to avoid that person by running and locking yourself in the classroom or wherever. Then if that doesn't work, unfortunately, then you have to deny the access. And so what you would do is you would barricade, kind of like we saw in the New York thing last time, about a month ago. You would put your children in the classroom and you would barricade the door, and you would put them in what Secret Service would call a hard room, which a lot of times is the bathroom. You want to go into an interior room with no windows, right? Cinder block and stuff like that. So you're going to barricade yourself, and then God forbid, last ditch effort, you're going to have to defend, and you're going to have to take whatever you have in the classroom to fight for your children.
Yeah, absolutely. Very smart. Thank you so much for joining me with your expertise. Scott, before you go, where can people find you? Plug where they can find your social media, your podcast, all of that.
Yeah, thank you for having me again. It's Scott Bryson, Beyond the Service. We just do BTS for short. So all socials, Scott Bryson, BTS.
Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
All right, I know that this is a little bit of a hard turn, but we're getting into some scrolling time. Video kind of in line with this conversation about trans people and this shooter. It's a conversation about how young you have to start having this conversation. And we talked about this earlier this week when we played that video of Snoop Dogg, where he took his grandson to the movie theater and he was just shocked about the LGBTQ overtones in these movies and in these shows and in these kids' content. And he didn't know how to react when his son asked him about lesbians in the movie. And my argument was, I think grandparents need to know, and not just grandparents, I'm saying that because Snoop Dogg was talking to his grandson, but grandparents, parents, if you're around children, unfortunately, I think we need to be prepared to have these conversations, because whether parents like it or not, this kind of ideology is getting to kids. It doesn't matter how protective you are. It doesn't matter how much of a helicopter parent you are. This is going to get back to them. So I thought that this video was very concerning but important to share, because this 4-year-old asked her mom about trans ideology. Watch this.
In case you have to have this conversation with your kid as well, I just had to have a conversation with my 4-year-old. My 4-year-old, that's, if you're a boy, you're always going to be a boy, and if you're a girl, you're always going to be a girl. Because the other day, she's like, but some people can change their mind. I said, no. And this is the way I explained it to her, and it seemed to catch on. Like, she seemed to get it. I was like, okay, my shirt is black, but if someone says, no, it's blue. Okay, no, my shirt is still black. Even if they say, no, it's blue. It's still black. It's always going to be black. And she's like, oh. Anyway, it's unfortunate that I have to have this conversation with my 4-year-old, but this is where we're at right now.
That made me think, if a 4-year-old is coming to her mom asking, I thought that trans people, you could transition to another gender or another biological sex. You can be, if a man wants to be a woman, he can. The fact that ideology has gotten to a 4-year-old is super concerning, because where is the 4-year-old hearing this? Are they hearing it from their preschool teachers? I mean, especially because this 4-year-old learned about trans stuff not from her mother. So I'm assuming not from the father, right? If the parents are likely on the same page when it comes to this kind of stuff. But is this a family member that has said something? Is this a babysitter that might have said something? Like I said, a preschool teacher. I mean, very concerning to think about why a 4-year-old would have this kind of content on their radar.
Don't you think that it's getting ubiquitous, though? I mean, it's like it is literally everywhere, targeted to everyone. And so, like, we see it as adults and a ton of stuff even we cover on our show, but it's in 4-year-olds' children's books.
Yeah,
like, it is everywhere.
To your point, someone in the chat just said, or was it something the kids saw on TV? But I don't know. I'm trying to think back to when I was 4 years old. It was a long time ago, but I'm thinking if I saw a trans person on TV, I wouldn't even know what that was at 4 years old, right? You don't know. So maybe if they're already asking questions, someone's answering them, right?
Oh, 100%. But we know that they're all, it's that age is exposed to this. Back to your Snoop point, and just this would be interesting to get your take on this. One of the things that hit me, I just looked it up. Lightyear came out in 2022.
Yeah.
And Snoop, this was only a couple of days ago that he made this. Are we at a place now in culture where we're starting to like stop this? Like the conversation is starting at the top. I mean, we talked a couple weeks ago about Denzel's comments, and some of these people are now taking stances from the top that might not have 3 years ago, might not have 4 years ago, but just to hear Snoop say that now, it's interesting that like, you know, well, that movie came out in 2022, didn't it bug you the next day? You didn't feel like saying something the next day? It's like the culture, I feel,
has changed,
is changing, and I just think that that's something that's in his administration. That's a positive thing. So we'll see. But like, I just thought that was interesting.
Yeah. We can only hope that the culture is changing for the better and that kids are not exposed to sexual and gender conversation at all. But do you remember that video we played, Andy, of the older protesters who were very lackluster? They were very low energy.
My body, my choice.
My body, my choice. Not very convincing. Well, these might be their cousins. These are another group of older protesters who are protesting a sidewalk or a crosswalk being painted over. And I couldn't figure out where this was, but I can only imagine that it is in Florida because FDOT has said that they are removing all of the rainbow, all of the murals or anything that is in the road to hopefully not distract people who are driving. But here are some elder people, not wiser because one of them's laying in the road. Watch this.
Save our sidewalk! Save our sidewalk! Keep us safe! Keep us sidewalk! Keep us safe! Keep our sidewalk! Keep our sidewalk!
So many questions about this video.
I have a lot of questions because, I mean, what was there, maybe like 15 people in there?
What county road was that on too? Like Route 987. It looks like not even the mail truck drives up that way.
No one's watching. No, I mean, of course, they posted this on social media, but someone in the chat said, shouldn't they be playing shuffleboard? I mean, they're out here, they're protesting the road being paved over. Who cares? But I guess they have nothing better to do. One person is laying in the road. They've got cones out. They're all standing in the middle of the road. And as you know, in Florida, if someone is blocking the road and they refuse to leave, you can turn them into a speed bump. A softer speed bump, but a speed bump nonetheless.
I sort of thought maybe the guy just died and they were out there and just thought, well, it took us a while to get out here, so might as well do like a 2-for-1.
Yeah.
Let's have a protest.
I saw someone comment on it. Like, I think that person just had a heart attack, but they're going with the protest anyway. So, yeah. Let me get my iPad all set up because I haven't done this in a while. But someone in the chat said, help, I'm protesting and I can't get up.
That's exactly right.
Exactly. Let me get my iPad set up. I haven't done this in a while. Gone through the comments, but I found 2 videos that I wanted to go through the comments because they made me laugh. So this first one, this woman has a strong message for Elon Musk. Watch this.
Elon Musk, in the name of Jesus Christ, I condemn your actions, your inaction. Your platform has received over 30 emails about this. I received one, said that I was spamming. Prove it!
Whoa, she gets a little testy at the end there. But what's interesting is that I don't know what her issue with Elon Musk is, but she says that she is triggered by his actions and his inaction. So Elon Musk cannot do he can't do anything right. According to this woman, actions and inactions, both bad for Elon Musk. But she said that she had sent someone on Elon Musk's team or at X 30 emails, and she got an email back saying that she was spamming. I would agree that she is in the wrong. She is spamming. If you're sending someone 30 emails, you are being a troll. So if we could pull up some of the comments here, we'll look at her face. This is a nasty woman.
She looks like she played linebacker for the 78 Steelers.
She is a nasty woman. So someone said, folks, I think we just found our next Democratic candidate. Actions and inactions, that man can't win. Like I said, I felt the prove it spray hit my face. Did anyone else wipe their mouth after watching this? Someone else agreed that 30 emails does sound like spamming. Someone said, gets to vote, by the way. This is the Democrat Party. And someone said, Elon Musk right now with this. Yeah, I don't think Elon Musk cares what this woman thinks, this spammer troll thinks. She is something else. I also saw a comment about someone saying, this just made me go floss my teeth. So if you needed a reminder to floss tonight when you go to bed, there it is. This next one, I have to say, we're going to end the show on some blind reactions. So no blind reactions. Okay. No blind reactions tonight. So this is the last video of the show. And I want to preface this by saying, if you feel like you are easily offended by things, don't watch. Thank you for staying this far. I'll see you tomorrow. I don't want to see any comments saying this was mean, blah, blah, blah. Again, if you can't take a joke, because I'm not making fun of this person, I am making fun of the comments. Okay, so that is my disclaimer. I don't want to see any snowflake comments about me being mean. If you can't take a joke, I'll see you tomorrow. This guy is an accountant. He is making content on TikTok. He's providing
he's been an accountant for a long time.
Financial advice. He has been an accountant for a very long time. I want you all in the chat to guess who this reminds you of. Watch this.
To understand your finances, understand your financial situation, create a budget that works for you, tackle debt strategically, build an emergency fund, save, invest for the future, track and review regularly. Check my great profile out.
All right. Anyone in the chat want to guess who that reminded you of? Maybe a former president? People in the chat already coming in with the Sleepy Joe, Feeble Joe, Joe Biden, let's go Brandon. Someone said Mitch McConnell. But if we could pull up the comments, everyone in the comments was making me laugh. So again, I'm not making fun of this poor accountant, but someone said, nice. Nice. What is that? Something was hanging off of his face. I don't know what it was. Get this man in Congress. He's going to fit in with Biden and Mitch McConnell. Get this man in Congress, just dripping with knowledge. Get this man in office immediately. He should run for president when he gets older. Something to look forward to for this nice old man.
That's a good one.
Every Biden speech. This is someone's pawpaw. Hey, Biden, how you been, champ? This makes me sad. And someone said, y'all be kind. We did it, Joe. Perfect president potential. Sounds like Biden trying to form a sentence. Joe, is that you? Biden's side hustle. So
he's the guy that taught the guy that taught the guy that taught the guy that taught Dave Ramsey.
He's been in the game for a long time. He's probably the oldest CPA in the country. So okay, I
think if this guy was selling insurance, can you imagine the residuals? I mean,
he's been in the game for a long
100 years
time.
worth of insurance this guy's got.
Yeah, someone in the chat said, I'm not laughing at him either, but it is scary how similar to Joe Biden. I mean, that, if you put Joe Biden's face, I would have said, yeah. If you put Joe Biden's face, maybe made an AI video with that audio, I would have believed it. So, all right, I'm glad we could all take a joke. I just had to do the disclaimer. I knew people were going to be upset because people in the comments were like, don't be mean, he's an old man. I'm like, I know, I'm not making fun of him. But the comments were making me laugh. Okay. Thank you for watching the show tonight. If you want more content from me, you got to go on social media at Hayley Caronia. You can follow me on X, Instagram, Truth Social, and of course, TikTok. That's where I do all of my scrolling. And thank you so much for being here. I'll see you tomorrow right here on Rumble.